In this video we take a look at the Rüstungsnotprogramm, the Armaments Emergency Program from January 1945. This program featured a massive reduction in weapon and vehicle types. Additionally, it set various production numbers, which we will compare with the values from February and March 1945. First off, the immediate origin of the Armaments Emergency Program is as follows. In November 1944, when the Allied air offensive against the Ruhr reached its peak, steel production, the most important prerequisite for armaments, was on the verge of collapse. And at the same time, the Allies were stepping up their attacks against the German rail network. Armaments Minister Speer had dared for the first time to speak of an emergency program in a memorandum to Hitler. Hitler did not sign the Armaments Emergency Program initially. He waited until 23rd January 1945. The historian Rolf-Dieter Müller assumes that Hitler postponed the order for the program in hopes that the Ardennes offensive might not require such drastic measures, although he also mentions at other parts that Speer did not push the matter too hard. It is also important to mention that the proposal in November 1944 likely was quite different to January 45. Initially, a key objective was central procurement for all three branches of the Wehrmacht, yet the inter-service rivalry and misplaced optimism hampered the development of the program. This led the General Staff of the Army to create their own program in January 1945, which was called Sturmprogramm des Heeres, Assault Program of the Army. Yet it was also labeled as a plan, just in case it was necessary and the current production plans should be continued. Speer was optimistic again after a new front visit. But when Speer personally witnessed the advance of the Red Army on the Upper Silesian coalfield during his trip on the Eastern Front, his attitude changed fundamentally. Now a rapid economic collapse was also conceivable for him and could even be expressed to the Führer. Speer pleaded for drastic interventions in armaments planning. The historian Andreas Kunz summarizes the objectives of the Armaments Emergency Program as follows. The use of the remaining assets and resources was to concentrate on the completion and finishing of the Wehrmacht's most important weapons. In this way, the calculation went, the Wehrmacht was to be enabled to regain the Ruhr and Upper Silesia, thereby reconstituting a basis for armaments production. Be aware that this document has the title Rüstungsnotprogramm monatlicher Bedarf, Armaments Emergency Program monthly demand, but it is not dated and apparently it should be an appendix to another document. In the header it contains the line Appendix 2, but without further information, so it could also be a draft. Although based on a document from 23rd February 1945 with the title Development of the Material Armament, I assume it is the appendix for the emergency program, since after the following entry the listed weapons are identical to the weapons in the document. An emergency armament program has therefore been drawn up and approved by the Führer on January 23, 1945, providing for the production of the following weapons. Yet I must add here I'm not certain that this is the actual program that was enacted, although it is probably not so far off. So what is written in the document? First off, it is structured by listing several arms of the German army, but there are some missing. The arms by order of appearance are infantry, engineers, artillery, the Naval Truppe, Heeresflak-Artillerie, Army anti-aircraft artillery. Keep in mind that some AA forces were under Luftwaffe and some under army control. These were the guys for the army. Additionally, there were also two more points that were not arms, namely motorized and carriages and non-motorized vehicles. Infantry. Principle: one firearm, one machine gun, two mortars, 8 cm and 12 cm, one infantry anti-tank gun, one close combat anti-tank weapon, two rifle grenades, one hand grenade. Probably the strongest reduction here was for the rifle grenades, because according to Fleischer by 1945 the number had increased to 16 types of German rifle grenades. For more information on German rifle grenades, be sure to check out this video, by the way. It not only shows a real launcher, but also blueprints of some grenades as well. But back to the document. It comes with a proposal. A firearm, 600,000 pieces including 150 to 200,000 MP44, 100,000 carbine 43. Second, 1 machine gun, 35,000 MG42 simplified. Number 5, 1 infantry anti-tank gun, 1000 units with the power of the anti-tank launcher PAW600. 6, a close combat anti-tank weapon, 1.5 million Panzerfaust. Or later an advanced development such as the double-shot grenade. For the rifle grenades, one was a regular ammo and the other were signal grenades with parachutes. Be aware that the skipped parts were mostly the ammo counts. So there are a few interesting points to discuss. First of the contradiction of one type of firearm and then listing 2 different ones. And thank you to Andrew for pointing out this to quote his review. Not only that, if I'm reading the document correctly, the budget for 600,000 units, but the Sturmgewehr 44 and Gewehr 43 account at best for half, 300,000 of that production. So we are talking about at least 3 types of firearms here. The missing ones were very likely the K98K, the standard German bolt-action rifle of the war. Additionally, at that point the MP44 was already Sturmgewehr 44, since Hitler renamed the weapon already in October 1944. You can find that order and much more in our book, The Assault Platoon of the Grenadier Company. It contains the original German text on one page and the English translation with lots of comments on the other page. The K43 refers to the carbine 43, which was originally called Gewehr 43 and was a semi-automatic rifle. For the MG, it is noted MG42 simplified, vereinfacht. This was the other name for the MG45. According to Hahn, only 10 were produced. Be aware that according to the statistics from April 1945, in March 1945 a total of 25,705 machine guns were produced, most of them MG42s, but also 6,322 MG34, which was more expensive and less reliable than the MG42. Likely some of these were used in tanks, but still, this shows that the optimization of the armaments production was quite limited. The next item is interesting. First of the name, Infanteriepack. So Infantry anti-tank gun. I might be wrong, but I can't recall running into this name before. The weapon mentioned was the Panzerabwehrwerfer 600, meaning literally tank defense thrower, although anti-tank launcher is the more meaningful translation, which in the other document was called PWK 8H63, whereas PWK stands for Panzerwurfkanone. Hahn notes, here a tail-stabilized 2.75 kg projectile was fired. The 0.36 kg propellant charge was located at the rear of the shell. During firing, a pressure of about 1,100 atmospheres was reached. This pressure was reduced by the perforated plate, and when about 550 atmospheres had accumulated behind the shell, a safety pin broke and the shell left the barrel. All of this resulted in a lightweight barrel and thus a lightweight gun carriage. This weapon used hollow charge warheads, by the way. Now the mentioned production numbers compared to the production numbers from March 1945 clearly indicate that the production could not keep up. Only 48,600 Sturmgewehr 44 were produced and 23,700 Karabiner 43. For the mortars, the proposed numbers were 4,000 and 1,500 per month, but in March 1945 only around 2,000 and 0 were produced, or at least the number is missing. The number for the previous month was 135, so also a far cry from 1,500. It seems only for the Panzerfaust the numbers were matched. Hahn notes 1.96 million for February 1945. Let's move to the engineers. A. Principle: 1 anti-personnel mine, 1 anti-tank mine, 1 flamethrower, 1 bridge device. Without going into too much detail here, Hahn lists that in 1944 at least 13 different types of mines were produced. For 1945 he lists 8. For the flamethrower, the proposed model was the flamethrower 46, and for the bridging equipment someone wrote by hand in parentheses Tiger-Tragkraft, meaning tiger carrying capacity, likely referring to the tank. About the production numbers, 3 million infantry mines should be produced per month. For all of 1945, Hahn lists that 2.6 million units of the Schützenmine 42 were produced. Let's move to artillery next. Principle: 2 guns. Proposal: light field howitzer 1000 pieces, heavy field howitzer 300 pieces. For both guns, if possible, development of a mine shell to achieve mortar effect and long-range grenades to increase firing range. If with this limitation of the production, assault howitzers and armored artillery can still be produced, they are considered included in the above figures. Here there is not much change. These 2 artillery guns were already the standard issue for the infantry divisions in 1939 and were kept throughout the whole war. Although of course various divisions received at times outdated and/or captured equipment. What got completely removed were the light and heavy infantry support guns. These weapons I discussed with Jens Wehner in this video. I must add here, I have no idea what a mine shell is. Although since it is a photo of a microfiche displayed on the screen that is itself a bad scan, maybe it's something different. I'm particularly confused by the mortar effect, because I know the mine effect, which is discussed in my video on German artillery tactics. Anyway, let's move to the Nebelwerfer. A. Principle: if capability of German chemical industry permits, production of ammunition for 1 weapon. As mentioned in my video on the Nebelwerfer versus the artillery, the first one is extremely high maintenance in regard to ammo consumption. The weapon of choice in this case was the 15 cm Nebelwerfer, so basically the first one that fired rockets and was also used on the Panzerwerfer. So what about anti-aircraft guns? Principle: limitation for the army in the end to 1 weapon, namely 3.7 cm. Proposal: delivery from the Air Force of 750 devices of the available calibers, initially including 2 cm, later transition to 3.7 cm with associated ammunition. Co-delivery of 8.8 cm guns according to the capability of the armament production of the Luftwaffe. No major surprise here, although I'm not sure if I understand the last sentence completely. I assume it should mean that if the production is sufficient that the Luftwaffe gives a few Flak 88 to the army. Next are the motorized vehicles. Principle: 1 motorcycle, 1 car, 1 truck, 2 trailers, towing vehicles, 3 ton, 8 ton, 12 ton, 18 ton. A bit of context about the towing vehicles. These refer to the various unarmored half-tracks. These were produced to 4 types. Before the war there were 8 types and during the war another 7 types were added, not counting captured and armed vehicles, of one which was the famous Kettengrad. Yet there's also some interesting follow-up text. It is well known that the non-uniform setup of the German motor vehicle companies does not allow to limit to these few types. Therefore, we ask the Chief of the Armed Forces Motor Transportation for an opinion on AA. What extreme limitation of German vehicles types can be proposed without limiting the efficiency of the German production capabilities still in operation? B. What extreme production of motor vehicles of all types still seems possible at all? The proposal notes 4,000 cars and a total number of 12,000 trucks, adding that the RSO, the Raupenschlepper Ost, a Caterpillar tractor, is included in this number as well. This was already a major issue before the war and the government had intervened to rectify the situation, although with limited success. In Germany, the rationalization in car industry in the 1920s had limited effects, for neither the reduction of car models nor the standardization of components was accomplished. They were achieved at the end of the 1930s under the pressure from the government, Schellplan, but remained without substantial results because of the outbreak of the war. Finally, the non-motorized vehicles. Principle: 1 vehicle which is suitable for crew towing at the same time, 1 other carriage. Proposal: 8,000 infantry vehicle number 8, 8,000 other carriages, all kinds of infantry carts. So yeah, about 16,000 non-motorized vehicles, which was actually a bit less than the total number of motorized vehicles proposed. To summarize, the Armaments Emergency Program was quite a radical program that aimed to reduce the different types of weapons and vehicles to a bare minimum. In many cases the proposed numbers were quite higher than the current output, which in some cases likely was also influenced by the fact that the focus on fewer types should allow to produce more efficiently. Particularly interesting is the fact that even this program was postponed several times, and if such a focus on the production of types would not have made more sense in 1940. Or was it simply not possible due to how the German war economy and especially the occupied industries were structured? Well, I hope you learned something new. Thank you to Andrew for reviewing the script. Thank you to all my supporters on Patreon and Subscribestar. As always, sources are listed in the description. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for watching and see you next time.